Welcome to another episode of Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. This is a show which highlights the importance of estate planning and why everyone needs to do it. And, of course, the unfortunate consequences of what happens far too often when people don't plan. I'm your host, John Braddock. I'm the author of Click Here When I Die and the founder of My Life and Wishes, The Legacy Vault, which is an online planning and document storage solution created specifically to make things easier for those you love. Today, I am thrilled to introduce my very special guest, Yuki Ku. She is the founder of Roots and Wings Legal in Walnut Creek, California. Let me tell you just a little bit about Yuki. Yuki's remarkable journey in law began with a stellar career in corporate mergers and acquisitions, emerging companies, and venture capital at prestigious international firms like Covington and Burling, as well as K&L Gates. She also led the legal department of a Series E tech company in Silicon Valley, recognized by Time as one of the 100 most influential companies. However, it was a deeply personal experience that reshaped Yuki's professional path. Following the sudden passing of their father in 2022 without an estate plan, Yuki witnessed firsthand the turmoil that lack of preparation can bring upon a family. This pivotal moment, guided by her faith, inspired her to establish Roots and Wings Legal. Her mission is to ensure that no other families endure the hardship that hers did by providing tailored estate and succession planning. Roots and Wings Legal combines Yuki's corporate law expertise with heartfelt commitment to preserving family legacies. The firm empowers families and business owners with robust legal solutions, emphasizing the importance of staying grounded in values while preparing future generations to soar. She is dedicated to her community, and her passion is for helping others navigate the complexities of estate planning with compassion and purpose. So please join me in welcoming Yuki. Hi, Yuki.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's great to have you on. So how are things out in Northern California today? It appears to be sunny in the back.
It's nice. It's beautiful out there. It's a
Wonderful.
little on the hot side, but it's still very beautiful.
Well, I'm down here in Arizona, and it's a little on the hot side here as well.
That's
Probably,
what summer's meant to be.
indeed. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me. You know, as our audience knows, I love talking about passion, the why behind why people do what it is they do, what gets them up in the morning and motivated. So can you share about the moment you decided to make this significant career shift, and how your dad's passing influenced that decision?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. I would say my career choices have been driven by a lot by the influence from my dad, or my family experiences. So my passion originally was in corporate law, in business law, because I grew up in a small business family, and we had a small restaurant, we had a store, and so as I was growing up, I just have this mission that I need to help my dad, help my family understand how to navigate business from a legal perspective. My dad didn't speak any English. My family didn't speak any English. And I grew up in Hong Kong, in colonial Hong Kong. So everything was written in English. All the leases, all the contracts, everything was written in English. And they didn't know what they were doing. So I just really, very early on, I had this in me that, I need to be there for my family. I need to help them. So my first passion was getting into law, getting into business law, so I can help them understand, I can be there for them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when I got into law school. I never considered any other areas of law. And I practiced for 12 years, 10, 12 years, just in corporate law. And then in 2022, my dad passed away. And it was tough for us because he was he was still a business owner, and so he had several businesses, and he didn't have an
And
estate plan.
was he still in Hong Kong?
He was still in Hong Kong, so it was international for us, and he had businesses on different continents as well. Like, this day and age, you can do business everywhere. You don't have to just do business in your own small town. So it was just a little bit all over the place in terms of his assets and stuff. We have no idea what assets he had because he was just not organized as a business owner. But what was really devastating for us was that he was just not organized, even from an estate planning perspective. Like, nobody knew what he had. So my sister lives in the UK, my brother lives in Hong Kong, and I live in the US. All three of us had to just, leave what we were doing and went back to Hong Kong and helped my mom sort this out. And my dad didn't leave any manual for us to figure out what. It was just really hard. And so we waited in the house, like the apartment that he was staying, for to see what bills we get, what do we know, like what can we find. I even had to hack into his computers to see if I could find something. No, we couldn't find anything. So after a few months, we were like, Mom, we just have to go back to doing what we're doing. So we kind of just closed the case. We just decided, the three of us decided that, whatever that he had, it's fine. We don't need it. We already lost that. Like, we don't need anything else. So we just decided that we won't pursue any of the lost assets. So other than the few things that my mom and dad jointly own, we have no idea what he had. So that was a nightmare to sort that out, spend months figuring things out, waiting for things to show up themselves, which never happened. And I know he had a couple of big deals that were about to close. We could not establish standing to claim our rightful share. And so that part was just really hard, really complicated. And of course, my mom was like, she was just so devastated. My dad died very suddenly. My dad had an emergency heart attack. He was only 65 at the time. And nobody knew he had a heart problem. So when he passed 3 days after he had an attack. So on his deathbed, he was still texting people and saying, hey, my brother, company was having a grand opening. You guys should come and help, do the ribbon cutting, watch all of it. My dad was still rallying for my brother. So that just speaks what kind of person he was. But he didn't consider during that time he needed a will, he needed a trust, he needed anything. He didn't call anybody, he didn't call any lawyers. He just didn't think he was going to die. So yeah, my mom was really, really clueless. And so it was really hard for her. My mom is still somewhat in denial. It was hard for my brother and my sister. My brother, literally, his company was opening in 3 days from when he passed. And he couldn't stop everything. He couldn't just stop everything and not have a grand opening. Everything was ready to open. So and also my brother's wife, so my sister-in-law, was pregnant. And because of the shock, she gave birth the same day my dad passed.
Oh my goodness.
So it was just chaos. It was just chaos when my dad passed. And it took me a long time to really let this all sink in and settle in my mind what really happened. And after that whole episode, I took a few months really to digest what happened, because I got a new nephew the day I lost my dad. My brother had a new business. All of that just happened too suddenly. And after all the dust settled, I decided that, there must be meaning to my life. And, this really doesn't need to happen to people. If people just know a little more, if my dad just thought about it when he was on his deathbed, instead of rallying for my brother, he could have called a lawyer. None of this needs to happen. So I just decided that, what, there must be a bigger purpose in life, why I experienced this, why this happened to me. and I need to help people get organized. So I started the firm after all the dust settled, and I call it Roots and Wings Legal. I want to really help people get organized, want to help people grow that deep roots, and then we all are doing our part to provide for our next generations. Those are the wings in my company's name. And so that's why I started the firm. So the first product, the first service that we do is estate planning, because I thought that was the number one thing my dad just didn't do well enough. And then as I continue to serve the community, I'm realizing, the business for business owners, the succession is actually really important, because imagine if my dad died when I was a little younger, my mom would not be able to hold down the fort, handle all the vendors, the customers, fulfillment, employees, everything. She wouldn't be able to. And then what happens? Then the business might just close. Then what happens? She's not going to be able to find a job. Like, the family just falls apart. So now that I'm realizing, that is a gap. That is a gap that people need the support. So now I am doing estate planning. I really have a heart for estate planning for business owners, but I also do business succession planning for business owners. And of course, if they need exit, that's my background. I can help them with an M&A if it comes along. But that's how I found my passion. I think there is a great need for people to serve them and help them understand what needs to be done.
Yeah, I love that. And again, so sorry for your loss and everything that you had occur so rapidly. But it's our life experiences, I believe, that lead to our passion. I spent 30 some years in the financial services world, and it wasn't until my father-in-law died, lived right up the street, very similar situation, very private man, didn't share anything with anyone else, and it was a nightmare. And so my mission quickly became to develop a solution so that people would know everything, right? And it's so interesting that, like you say, your dad was on his deathbed, right? And some people, when they're on their deathbed, they start making lists. They go, oh crap, people are going to need to know like where this is and where that's at, and do that. But your dad was still so positive that he's going to be fine. He's texting about the grand opening of his
Yes.
son, your brother's business,
Oh, yeah.
which is just so important because you know he didn't know he was going to die. We all know we're going to die someday, right? um, but we never do. We never know when it's going to occur, right?
Yeah.
And we have a choice. Our lives are complicated, and if you think life is complicated, let's try death on for a little bit, because someone has to sort through everything, which is why I say all the time, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't think you have anything, because you actually do. you know like I always say, estate is just a fancy word for stuff, and we all have stuff, and family's going to have to track it down and find it. And then, as you say, those who maybe are business owners also, it's so critical that there be a plan in place for that business beyond just the family, right?
Absolutely. In our case, my dad's situation is not unique to him. This is very common for business owners. A lot of times people are negotiating deals and they don't have any paper trail until there is a real deal, there is something, they think of consequence. But if you don't inventory where things are, where things stand ahead of time, like we couldn't figure out what deals he was negotiating and what was the agreed payout for him. We couldn't figure that out.
Right.
And I don't even know who to call. That's the thing. I think that's why, using Legacy Vault is really helpful, because all these paperwork, all these wisdom, contacts, you can put it in Legacy Vault. So someone like me, when I'm helping my dad through the estate, I could just call up that person and say, hey, look, that deal my dad worked on it. Where are we? Can we help you? Or how where are the paperwork, right? We would be able to track it. Right now, we just have no way to track anything.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I always say, some secrets shouldn't be taken to the grave. And unfortunately, your father took some with him. And many times, we might not want to share a lot of this stuff right now with our families. We don't want to have them worry about our business or be concerned, or maybe we don't want our kids to know how much wealth we actually have. But we have to build that plan and have that roadmap. And by using something like the Legacy Vault
Mhm.
with a complete estate plan, you
Absolutely.
can provide the access to the family when they need it so that we don't take those secrets with us, right?
Absolutely. A good estate plan, a good succession plan, it's only handling the legal side of things, right? You still need, we are people, we're holistic. We still live the reality of life that is outside of the paperwork. So how do we make sure we are really setting up our heirs, right? Our family for success in handling this so that they can move on from this chapter and grieve. The grief process, it's really hard to start when you are still really entangled in figuring things out. And that's why we had to decide that, you know what, mom, we're done. Like, we have to move on. I have to focus on grieving dad. I cannot be thinking about how much money we could have received from all of the what do we not have? Like, let's just move on. It's just too much. So having something like Legacy Vault handy, it's really important. This is the missing piece of a good family legal planning.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And you're right. You made the comment earlier when you were talking about your dad's passing and that your mom was just so overwhelmed. And and there was the same case for Michelle's mom at when Michelle's dad died. um and you watch this, and the person that she had been with for 60 years was gone. um she she wasn't in any position to think through where things were, what assets were there. She was just too caught up in her grief. And so we had to take care of things. Michelle did, the kids do, you did, because your mom was in that situation. And I think the resounding message to families and to our audience is that, you know, if you're a husband and a wife, or life partners, whatever your situation is, when the time comes, one of you goes, the other one of you probably isn't going to be the one handling everything. You're going to be in such, I mean, it's the worst imaginable nightmare any of us can live, right? So you're going to have to rely on someone else, and largely it's going to fall to your kids, or if you don't have children, maybe a sibling, or someone else. But the thoughtful thing to do is to be prepared and have the things laid out.
I have a contrasting story, also a family story. Um, how my grandfather, my mom's side grandfather, handled his estate. So my grandfather was also a business owner. So he knew what he was. He was bright when he was, before he got really old. What he did was he spent it all. Spent his money when he was alive. He was, I'm a big proponent of this. Spend your money, die with zero. And I remember multiple times he looked at how much he had, and then he started giving money away. He was just like, family meeting, my uncles, my aunts, cousins. He, like, every person gets a certain amount of money. He decided, I was too little, so I don't remember how he came up with the distributions, but he gave it multiple times during his lifetime. So he just tallied how much he had, how much he needed. He gave one batch, And then wait a few years, he spent it down like, oh, okay, I think I still have more to give, and he give it again. So he gave it all before he passed. I think when he passed, it was just very little bit left in the account, and he held it in trust um for my aunt, my youngest aunt. She has special needs, so that's how that's how he did things. And I thought that was so good because now my aunt is being taken care of. Everybody's happy. Nobody fights over nothing. My all of my uncles and aunts are still happy. Like they're still having dim sum every weekend. So yeah, that's a difference. Like you do a good estate plan, you plan ahead, your kids, your grandkids, your family legacy continues. You don't do planning, it can be messy, you can lose a lot of money. Everything you work so hard, I can't my dad would turn in his grave if he knew that we gave up on all the deals that he was working on. But we couldn't figure it out. So
Yeah. But wait, what a great story, though, the contrast. So your grandfather, and I actually love that, because there's a couple of pieces to it. One is if you're a really good planner, then your money will run out the day after you die, right? If you could really work that plan, right? But what he saw, I'm guessing, because it's what my mind does, um, is he saw, okay, I've got plenty, I'm going to make it, and so I can distribute some now.
mhm.
And what a joy to
Oh
be
yeah.
able to give money and things to family when you can see it and see them appreciate it, much like if you were doing you plan to leave money to certain charity
Mhm.
upon your death. Well, why not leave a little bit each year before you're gone so that
Right.
you can see if your money's really you, benefiting, you
Right.
know
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big conversation I like to have with people is if you can give when you're alive, give when you're alive. The joy that comes with it is a lot, and you can see the impact of it. If you whether you're giving it to your kids or grandkids to start a business, go to college, or you're giving to a charity, you can see the homeless shelter being built. You can see how, people are being fed. You can see how the money goes to the world, go to Rwanda, go to wherever. You can see your costs being carried out with the money that you're leaving instead of hoping that they get used the right way when you die. That's a different kind of legacy you're leaving behind.
yeah, exactly. So I believe I read somewhere that you focus on the full spectrum of legacy planning. Is that what you mean there? Looking at all the various components.
Yeah. So when I help people plan for their legacy, I try to understand what what kind of person this is. What do they stand for? Because everyone is different. And so I try to understand what their objectives are. And we will have conversations like this. Like, do you like to give? Like, like let's talk about that, because it's different when you give when you're alive versus when you're not here. A lot of times I work with business owners. So we also can talk about, hey, if there's an exit, you're gonna have a lot of cash sitting around. What are you gonna do with it? Is there a way to help you um, be more tax effective if you have, especially if you have a giving heart, right? How do you be more tax effective with the money that you have and the impact that you can have? That's one thing we talk about. For families, if they still have young kids, we also talk about, hey, what do you want to do with the kids? If you're not here, how are you going to make sure your kids are raised with the values that you have? Because let's be honest, if we didn't grow up with the parents that we have, our values are going to be very different. My dad actually grew up as an orphan. My paternal grandparents died when he was very little. So he raised himself. And I could see the difference between him versus, other adults in my family, how my dad, there's something always missing that he was trying to prove when he was still alive. And and I think if you leave that the values, the wisdom aspect the human aspect of your legacy, if you leave that, you capture that, your kids are going to grow up with more, more than just the money you're leaving behind. In fact, money is cold. You know, I think I would imagine if my dad really had a note from my grandpa, grandma telling him how much he was proud of him, how, we don't need you to prove anything. I would imagine my dad had a completely different adulthood, would have a completely different life. So part of my planning is talking about, hey, is there something you want to leave for your kids? And we will record a video if that's what they like. And so that we make sure the kids actually get that, as part of the legacy of their parents.
I love it. And I noticed the banner behind you, redefining legacy, estate planning with kids at heart. And I know you place a strong emphasis in your community on serving not only families, but children, orphans, widows, widowers. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So because I got into estate planning from the perspective of being an orphan. Like I am an adult orphan. I lost my dad and I miss him so much. And I want to help others not to get into the same situation that we got into. So as I build my practice, I think of it from what I've gone through, what I've seen my mom gone through, what I've seen my grandma gone through. How do we do this in a way that help them, take the pressure off of them, to help, whether to administer the trust or execute the estate? Like there are things that you really need to think from their perspective, not just from the grantor perspective, right? Very much like Legacy Vault is for. Legacy Vault is really not for the person who is going to die. It's really for the people that they care, that want to make it easy for them. So that's how I plan. I plan from that perspective, from the orphan's perspective, what the orphan would have liked to know my parents thought of me, what they wanted, what values do they want to instill in me from that perspective, or from the widow or the widower's perspective, like, okay, I really don't know what accounts you have. Like, even though we have a plan, okay, but what does that mean? Like, how do we execute on the plan? How do we contact these people? I really have no clue. A lot of times it happens pretty often is that one member of of the two partners, one member is more involved in getting organized, doing the finances, but often that person gets dementia first or dies first. The other person is really clueless. Is really clueless. I'm helping one of my clients right now. That's what happened. The husband just got a diagnosis on cognitive impairment. She's just so overwhelmed. She's so overwhelmed. She doesn't know how to do things. She's it's just really clueless. So I help them. Basically, I handhold her every step of the way. I look at everything. It's more like a counselor. Like I'm taking take on more of a counselor role in working with my clients instead of just a lawyer, a cold lawyer drafting documents. Here you go. See you next time when you need it. But I more do it from a counselor perspective. Like, what would you need? How do we get you into the state that you would like to be? And we do it together. We're there for you.
Yeah. And I love that. And your compassion really, really shines through. And I think, that's what separates, some estate planning attorneys from others, especially those who have lived through the experience. You have far more, I think, probably compassion on the back end than someone if they have no connection, they just do some estate planning on the side, a will, a trust, some of those things, but there's no, and no disrespect to any estate planning attorneys out there who do that. But living through the experience just brings it closer to home, and you're much better positioned to counsel people, both on the front end, and on the back end.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I sometimes spend too much time with my clients, and I don't bill on an hourly basis. So I actually really like to spend the time with them to build that relationship. I want to be there for them as their trusted advisor. Um, so I enjoy this practice. I like that ability to be closer to people and they call you when they need you. That's a good feeling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so building a successful practice in all your years of lawyering and then transitioning and now with Roots and Wings Legal, which by the way, I love your logo is amazing with
Great.
the tree and the colors and then the, from the roots in the ground to the birds,
Yeah.
flying away. But how I know as a mom, how do
Mhm.
you balance your work with your family life?
I it's hard. I would say it's really hard. Um, but I do prioritize my family. I do prioritize my kids. I am very involved with my kids. I spend evenings and weekends with them, uh, and we travel together. So you got to set boundaries. That's I think that's the hardest thing is setting boundaries. Because when you have your own practice, it's not just doing client work. There are other aspects of the business that um, that is different when you're just a lawyer in a law firm. So you just have to set harder boundaries.
Yeah, yeah. An old mentor of mine told me at one time, he said there you have three kinds of days. You have free days, focus days, and buffer days.
Mhm.
And what he would say was, if focus days are those days that are your business days, the days that make money, that help people generate revenue, grow your business. Buffer days are days that help you where you might not be doing money making activities, but is running the business and doing things to help you get prepared. And then free days. And he would say free days are a 24-hour period from midnight to midnight when you should not think about work. You should be present with your family, do everything else. And you use a buffer day to get ready so you can take that full day off without worrying about
Yeah.
doing things. And gentleman's name's Dan Sullivan. He has a company called Strategic Coach, where he helps entrepreneurs try and find work-life balance. Um, I was kind of on the short bus of that train because I still haven't quite figured out how to get a good free day in. Um, but uh, but anyway, I love that. Yeah, you definitely need to draw those boundaries, and especially when your kids are young, because mine are now all adults, and I look back and think, geez, did I really spend enough time? So, hey, as we start to wind down, I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything that I didn't ask or bring up that maybe you're like, man, I wish you'd asked me that question?
No, I think we had a very good conversation. So we covered. I think you covered a really good ground.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for joining me today, Yuki. I mean, it's been wonderful to hear about your journey and the innovative work that you're doing in the field of estate planning. And how can our audience connect with you?
I will share my contact information. And you can also I'm also on TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, what else? Instagram and Facebook. I'm everywhere.
Great. Well, what I'll do to make it really easy for our listeners is I will include all of your contact information um, in our show notes. So they'll be able to see it, at the bottom. So please feel free to reach out to Yuki if you have any questions or concerns with your own planning. And thank you again, Yuki. It's been a pleasure having you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure. I look forward to working with you.
Absolutely, as I do with you. And to you, our audience, as always, my friends, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.